So I've been doing a lot of thinking about Game of Thrones lately, and it made sense to make some sort of video on it. So I found myself thinking a lot about Daenerys' dragons and just exactly a bunch of things about them. How thick are those dragon scales? Throughout the series you see the arrows and sorts of spears and all different types of things bounce off the scales, but as we get into season 7 and 8, they're actually starting to hurt the dragons and, well, kill them. So how exactly does that work? Are Drogon scales any thicker than Viserion's or Rhaegal's? I did a bit more thinking. How exactly do the dragons breathe fire? Is it purely magical? Is there something about their bodies that forces them to recover the energy through eating or resting or something like that? How much energy does it cost to generate that fire in the first place? Is that again linked to some sort of purely magical source, or is it something that they can recoup themselves by eating, say? Going off of what we know from the show at least. Still, then I stumbled onto a different question entirely that seemed kind of useful. See, in the first episode of Season 8, Sansa mentions that she had stockpiled enough food for the Northmen, and that all the allies that she had gotten or knew about up to that point, but not enough for dragons, let alone the rest of Daenerys' army. Now, the question of exactly what dragons eat were answered by Daenerys. The question of what exactly dragons eat was answered by Daenerys there and then. Pretty much whatever they want. And I suppose there's no one who could really argue with Drogon or Rhaegal. If they wanted to eat something, they can easily roast it alive and then more than strong enough to just carry it off or just eat it however they want. But then you have the questions of how exactly were these dragons kept in line and how didn't they cause any troubles? Whilst they were in Westeros. I'm not sure if the fact that they're in a completely different habitat plays any sort of role, but surely these things would be chomping down on anything that they want, and they seem like they can eat a decent bit of food. That said, just because they could eat a decent bit of food doesn't mean they necessarily would. Rhaegal and Viserion were locked away in tombs for some time during the show. They likely didn't get as much food as Drogon, whilst Daenerys or Dany was still in the city, and once Dany left with Drogon, they stopped eating entirely. Who knows how long they went without food, but after Tyrion reminds everyone that, they would eventually waste away, they do need to eat, and freeze them, he also mentions he knows this because that's what happened to the Targaryen Dragons. They were kept in captivity, they had troubles eating, they weren't growing properly, they weren't living as dragons should, and wasted away and died. In our world, there are several animals that can go weeks without eating and also eat many times their body weight, like tigers. So we know that the dragons can go a decent stretch of time without actually eating. In fact, not only were they actually not eating, but they were still growing, which probably means that they could stockpile a decent amount of food and then just be fine for a fairly decent amount of time before beginning to waste away. And by stockpile, I don't necessarily mean that they just save food innately like that, but perhaps they can eat a ton of food and have it digest over a slow period of time, or their bodies work in such a way that they can have such a large meal and then just not have to eat again for a long time. It is true to say that predators, and these dragons would most likely be predators, not herbivores, say, they're carnivores for sure, would also eat a certain amount of food to keep themselves in shape, to avoid being fat, because they do actually need a fairly healthy body so that they can keep up the hunt. I mean, of course, dragons have a lot of advantages as predators. They can fly, quickly cook their food, quickly kill their food, without expending the same amount of effort that, say, a cheetah or lion or any other large cat would. Especially because even after eating for a while, they don't eat Tyrion. They don't seem to necessarily burn or tear things apart unless Dany wants them to, prior to them being locked up, of course. And really, they're quite comparable to dogs in that they're fairly loyal creatures. It still doesn't answer the question of how much a dragon would actually need to eat. Considering that one of the largest creatures in our world, the blue whale, can eat up to 3.6 tons of krill, which is the equivalent of 1.5 million calories, and itself weighs 170 tons. And the largest dragon in the Game of Thrones universe was able to completely swallow a mammoth, which themselves could grow to be as large as 13 to 15 feet, and their shoulder alone could weigh between 6 tons, all things considered, and that's just the shoulder, not the actual full weight of the animal. It's fair to say that if a dragon actually starts growing and lives a decent life, then it could probably be a large enough size to be chomping down some scary things. Because remember, Drogon and his brothers aren't even 5 years old yet, but some of the older dragons could live to be beyond 100, even 200, well, around the 200 mark. So, how much can a dragon eat? Or how much do they need to eat? I guess in the show, it's not really displayed that well. I suppose it doesn't necessarily need to be because they don't bring it up or use the plot point that well, even though they sort of bring it up in the first episode of season 8 and then don't really do anything with it, which is, I mean, there are plenty of people complaining about all of the dumb things they've done in the season, and, well, I don't see the point in doing that, other than just that. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. And till the next video, have a very good day. I'm Brian, and I'll see you in the next one.